Easy, easy. We'll get you through this, old friend. Just breathe for me.
Jack Grayson wasn't your typical billionaire. While most of his peers spent their days in boardrooms or lavish penthouses, Jack preferred the open spaces of Grayson Ranch, a sprawling estate nestled in the rolling hills of the West. A tech mogul by trade, he had made his fortune creating innovative software companies. But after selling his last business for billions, Jack sought something more fulfilling: peace, solitude, and a connection to nature. The ranch was his sanctuary. He had always loved horses, a passion that began in his youth. After buying the ranch, Jack shifted his focus entirely to raising horses, building a world-class breeding program. He spent long hours tending to his animals, overseeing their care, and taking pride in every foal born on the ranch. For Jack, there was a beauty in the simplicity of ranch life. The horses were more than just investments; they were his companions, his escape from the stresses of the corporate world. Despite his immense wealth, Jack remained humble and grounded. He lived in a modest stone house on the property, far from the trappings of his billionaire lifestyle. His routine was simple: early mornings spent with the horses, long days working on the ranch, and occasional meetings with business partners. Jack valued his privacy, often avoiding the spotlight unless absolutely necessary. To him, the ranch wasn't just a place, it was a life that he cherished more than any business venture. But Jack's quiet life on the ranch was about to be interrupted in a way he could never have imagined. What was supposed to be a routine day with his horses would soon turn into a desperate race against time. It started like any other day at Grayson Ranch, peaceful, quiet, and full of the familiar sounds of hooves thudding against the dirt and the wind rustling through the tall grass. Jack had spent the morning inspecting the fences on the northern pasture, checking on the horses, and overseeing a few minor repairs around the ranch. As usual, his mind was occupied with the usual tasks of ranch life: feeding, breeding, and keeping things running smoothly. But by noon, things had taken a sudden turn. Maggie, his trusted lead ranch hand, came running toward him from the barn, her face flushed with panic. "Jack, you need to come quick," she said, breathless. "It's Clementine. She's in labor, and something's wrong." Clementine was one of Jack's prize mares, a seasoned champion racer who had brought in millions over the years. She had been pregnant with her third foal, a highly anticipated one, and Jack had been looking forward to the birth. This foal was expected to be something special, an heir to Clementine's legacy. Jack followed Maggie to the barn, his heart racing. As he entered, he saw Clementine lying on the straw, sweating and breathing heavily, her eyes wide with distress. Her body trembled with the pain of labor, but there was something wrong. She wasn't pushing. The mare's sides heaved as if she couldn't get the foal out, and every moment that passed seemed to make her condition worse. Maggie knelt beside the mare, stroking her gently. "She's been struggling for over an hour now, Jack. I've tried everything. I don't know what else to do." Jack swallowed hard, trying to keep his own panic in check. The situation was becoming more critical by the second. A mare in prolonged labor could suffer serious complications, and if left too long, both the mare and foal could die. Jack immediately reached for his phone to call the ranch's regular vet, but then he paused. He knew the vet was miles away, and it would take too long for him to arrive. The gravity of the situation hit him hard. This wasn't just about the mare or the foal. It was about his future. Losing Clementine, especially with a foal on the way, would be a devastating blow to the ranch. This was his livelihood, his dream, and if he didn't act quickly, it could all slip away. "Maggie, we don't have time to wait." "I'm going in," Jack said, determination setting in. As Jack knelt beside Clementine, a heavy wave of emotion washed over him. His mind raced, but it was hard to focus. In the chaos of the moment, his deep connection with the mare and her unborn foal became painfully clear. Jack had never been the type to get emotional about his business ventures. He was a man of logic, decisions driven by numbers, strategy, and the pursuit of success. But Clementine was different. She wasn't just another horse. She represented years of hard work, dedication, and a bond that went far beyond business. He glanced at the mare, whose breathing had grown shallow, her body trembling in distress. Clementine's glossy coat, once sleek and proud, now looked dull with sweat. Her eyes, usually full of life, were clouded with pain and fear. Jack's heart ached as he stroked her trembling neck. He had known this horse for years. He had watched her grow from a young, fiery mare into a champion who had carried his dreams of success across racetracks worldwide. To him, she wasn't just a prized animal, she was family. Jack's mind wandered back to the moment he first bought her. He had been new to ranching then, just learning the ropes, unsure of what the future would hold. But when Clementine had arrived at Grayson Ranch, she had symbolized the start of something great, his escape from the relentless world of technology and a commitment to a life built on land, animals, and legacy. Watching her now, struggling in labor, felt like a cruel twist of fate. His thoughts flickered to the foal. This wasn't just any foal, it was the next in line to carry Clementine's legacy. This foal could be the one to bring the ranch global recognition, perhaps even the kind of fame and wealth that Jack had once dreamed of. Yet, at that moment, none of that mattered. Jack realized that the foal wasn't just an asset or a business opportunity, it was a life. And if he didn't act fast, that life might be lost before it ever had a chance to thrive. A quiet voice in Jack's mind whispered the unspoken truth. He wasn't ready to lose either Clementine or the foal. Yet, the weight of his decision pressed down on him. If he failed to save them, would his empire crumble? Could he live with that? Jack's hands shook as he placed them gently on Clementine's sides. He could feel the life fading from her, each breath more labored than the last. The desperation in her eyes mirrored his own. She was a fighter, but she was also a mother, and it was clear she was exhausted. Every instinct told Jack that time was running out. The foal had to be delivered soon, or both mother and child might not make it. Clementine's body trembled violently, and she let out a low whinny of pain. Jack's heart clenched. He had been through a lot in his life, built an empire from nothing, but this was different. There was nothing in his wealth or power that could fix this. Nothing that could ease the pain of a living creature. He was, at that moment, just a man, with nothing but his knowledge and his instincts to guide him. Maggie stood beside him, eyes wide with worry. "Jack, what are we going to do? The vet's too far away. She's not going to make it much longer." Jack could see the fear in her eyes. She had worked with horses for years, but she, too, had never seen anything like this. It was worse than they had feared. The foal seemed stuck, and with every failed attempt to push, Clementine's condition worsened. Jack took a deep breath, steadying himself. He couldn't afford to freeze or lose his nerve. He had to act. He knew the risks. Attempting to manually assist a horse in labor was dangerous, and if done wrong, it could cost both the mare and the foal their lives. But the alternative was worse. If he didn't try now, they would both die, and Jack would have to live with that guilt for the rest of his life. "Maggie, keep her calm," Jack said, his voice low and steady. "I need to get in there. I'm going to try to help her deliver." He didn't wait for a response. There was no time to waste. He had read everything there was to know about difficult births in horses, but now, standing there with Clementine in front of him, all of that knowledge seemed distant. All that mattered was the delicate, fragile life he was about to handle. With a steadying breath, he made his move, hoping and praying that his actions would save them both. Jack's hands trembled as he moved to assist Clementine, every instinct in him screaming to be gentle yet firm. He had read the books, studied the techniques, but nothing could truly prepare him for the gravity of this moment. He could see the fear in the mare's eyes, and it made his heart race. She trusted him, and he couldn't let her down. He carefully positioned himself behind her, his mind focused solely on the task at hand. Maggie had stepped back to give him space, her worried eyes never leaving the scene. Jack knew the clock was ticking. Clementine's labored breaths grew heavier, and with each one, it seemed she was slipping further away from him. The foal was stuck, its front legs twisted awkwardly in the birth canal, and Clementine couldn't push it out on her own. Jack's heart pounded as he gently reached into the mare's body, his fingers searching for the foal's legs. His mind raced through every step, every piece of advice he had ever read or heard from experienced ranchers. But in the back of his mind, there was a constant fear. What if he made a mistake? What if he couldn't save them? His fingers brushed against the foal's front legs. They were small but strong, the tiny hooves not yet ready to meet the world. Jack could feel the tension in the mare's body as another contraction hit, and he knew he had to act quickly. He took a deep breath, positioning himself just right before carefully pulling. It was an awkward maneuver. Too much force could harm the foal, too little could mean disaster. "Come on, Clementine, you can do this," Jack muttered under his breath, his voice barely audible over the mare's grunts of pain. His hands moved with precision, using just enough pressure to guide the foal down the birth canal. Minutes passed like hours. The barn felt suffocating, the air thick with anticipation. Jack's body ached with the effort, but he didn't stop. He couldn't. Finally, with one last push from Clementine and a gentle pull from Jack, the foal slid free, its tiny body collapsing onto the straw. Jack held his breath, his heart in his throat. Clementine let out a soft, exhausted whinny, her body trembling but still alive. Jack looked down at the foal, waiting for it to move, to breathe. The silence in the barn was deafening. Then, finally, the foal gave a weak cry. It was alive. And for Jack, that was the only thing that mattered. Jack's breath caught in his chest as he stared at the newborn foal. It lay in the straw, its tiny body still and fragile. But then, a miracle happened. The foal let out a soft, almost musical whinny. It was alive. Jack's heart swelled with relief, and he exhaled sharply, wiping the sweat from his brow. He hadn't realized how tightly he had been holding his breath until that moment. Clementine, too, let out a weary but satisfied sigh as she gently nuzzled the foal, her eyes flickering with the first signs of recognition. Jack slowly stood up, his hands trembling with the aftershock of the intense effort. He wiped his brow, his gaze never leaving the foal. It was a moment of triumph. The ranch had been spared a tragedy, and Clementine had come through it alive. But as Jack took a step closer to the foal, something struck him. There was something different about it. At first, it seemed like any other foal, legs long and wobbly, still covered in the protective fluid from birth. But as the foal began to move, Jack's eyes widened. Its coat. The foal's coat was unlike anything he had ever seen before. Instead of the typical brown or black hues of most horses, the foal's fur gleamed with a golden shimmer that seemed to dance in the low light of the barn. It wasn't a trick of the light. The fur actually sparkled, catching the sun's rays in a way that was almost otherworldly. Jack blinked, unsure if he was seeing things, but when he reached down to touch the foal's coat, the golden sheen was unmistakable. Maggie, who had been quietly observing the birth, stepped forward. Her eyes widened as she took in the sight. "Jack, is that real?" Jack could hardly believe it himself. He'd heard of rare, almost mythical horses born with unusual coats or markings, but this was beyond rare. It was something out of a dream. The foal's fur was streaked with vivid golden strands, glowing faintly as if it were bathed in sunlight. The markings were unlike any natural pattern Jack had ever seen in a horse. A shimmering aura surrounded its body, highlighting its already striking presence. But the coat wasn't the only strange thing. As the foal slowly began to stand, Jack noticed its build. It was larger than most foals at birth. Its legs were long and sturdy, its chest broad and powerful, as if it had been bred for strength and speed, even as a newborn. "Good God!" Jack muttered under his breath, his voice filled with awe. This is something else." He stepped back, gazing at the foal with a sense of reverence. In all his years of breeding horses, he had never encountered anything like this. He had raised many prize-winning horses with pedigrees that carried decades of championship bloodlines, but nothing had prepared him for this moment. Maggie was speechless, her eyes wide with disbelief. "Jack, this could change everything. This foal, this is something out of legend." Jack felt a shiver run down his spine. What had just been born in his barn wasn't just a foal, it was a phenomenon. This foal had the potential to become the stuff of legends, the kind of horse that could redefine the racing world. If the foal's extraordinary coat and size were any indication, it could be something truly special. He couldn't help but think of all the possibilities. Could this foal be the key to the future of his ranch? Or was it something even greater than that? Jack's mind raced with the implications. The foal's rarity, its beauty, and its potential made it invaluable. Yet, he couldn't help but wonder if there was something almost magical about this creature. Something beyond mere business and success. This foal, born in the most desperate of circumstances, could change everything, perhaps even Jack himself. But for now, as he watched the foal take its first steps, Jack could only feel awe and wonder. He had just witnessed a miracle. The birth of the foal quickly became the talk of the ranch, then the entire county. Word spread like wildfire, and soon, Jack found himself fielding calls from people he'd never even heard of: horse breeders, investors, even famous trainers. Everyone wanted a piece of the foal. Jack had seen his fair share of hype over prize horses, but this was different. The foal wasn't just special, it was extraordinary. The first to arrive was a renowned equine specialist from a nearby city, a man named Victor Foster, who had made a name for himself with his work on rare horses. Victor stood in the barn, his eyes wide with disbelief, as he examined the foal. This is unlike anything I've ever seen," he said, his voice a mix of awe and confusion. "The golden sheen, the build, it's otherworldly. I can't explain it." Jack had been waiting for this moment, but hearing Victor's words confirmed what Jack had already feared. This foal was a once-in-a-lifetime creature, a rarity beyond measure. The golden fur, the strength, the size, it all pointed to a potential that far exceeded anything Jack had ever dreamed of. But with this newfound attention came a flood of consequences. Offers poured in, each one more lucrative than the last. A billionaire breeder from overseas offered a multi-million-dollar sum for the foal, promising to make it the star of his international racing empire. Other buyers suggested Jack consider selling the foal to the highest bidder, turning it into a global sensation. Every conversation left Jack more torn than the last. Yet, despite the tempting offers, Jack couldn't shake the nagging feeling that something deeper was at play. He had saved the foal, he had worked tirelessly to bring it into the world, and now it felt like his entire future was being weighed against a price tag. What did it mean to raise something so rare, only to sell it off for profit? Could he really let go of the foal, knowing what it represented? Late one evening, as Jack sat alone in his office, reviewing the endless contracts and offers, something clicked. The foal was more than just a financial opportunity. It was the embodiment of everything he had come to value in his life: the unpredictable beauty of nature, the connection between human and animal, and the legacy of Grayson Ranch. This foal wasn't just an asset, it was a living testament to his dream. In that quiet moment of revelation, Jack realized what he had to do. The decision wasn't about money, it was about honoring the bond he had with the animals he loved, the ranch he had built, and the life he had chosen. He would keep the foal, not for profit, but for the legacy it represented. It wasn't just about what the foal could do for him, it was about what he could give to it. Weeks passed, and the foal grew stronger each day. Jack watched with a sense of awe as it trotted around the barn, its golden coat gleaming in the sunlight. Word had spread, and Grayson Ranch became a focal point for visitors, admirers, and curious onlookers, but Jack remained resolute in his decision to keep the foal. He had declined every offer, every promise of fame and fortune, and the ranch thrived in ways he hadn't anticipated. In the quiet of the evenings, Jack would sit on the porch of his stone house, watching the foal grow, his heart swelling with pride. The foal, now named Aurora, had become the symbol of something more than just success. It was a reflection of the connection he had forged with the land, the animals, and the simple joys of life. Jack realized that, despite his billionaire status, the true treasures of his life were not measured in money, but in the relationships he nurtured and the dreams he built. Grayson Ranch had become something far more than a business empire. It was his legacy, a place where nature, passion, and hard work converged. Jack had found peace, not in the race for wealth, but in the quiet moments spent with the animals he loved, and in the golden foal who had come to change everything.